All right, Andre, so let's do this. So, for those listening, I don't even know how long have we known each other? A long time.
Yeah, about 10 years or so from the University Club.
Probably. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, first met at the University Club years ago, and I know you're on the board there and involved with a number of things, but we're going back and forth and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we're just always chatting, but you're totally in financial services where we are too." And so I'm excited to hear specifically today about one of the initiatives that you're involved with around athletes. And well, I'll let you go into it. Before we go into it, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit of your background and what you do on a day to day. So,
Sure. My name is Andre Kwan. I'm a co-founder of Magna Carta Wealth. Before that, for the last 20 years, I've been specializing in real estate and finance as well as management. And then just through it all, just kind of like seeing what was happening on the landscape. I went to Ohio State. I'm a big believer in sports and athletics and kind of the athlete's journey. And as things continue to progress, right, you have these contracts that are starting to get upwards of $500 million, but that's great. But what happens to those brand new athletes that are, undrafted free agents or just trying to make a roster or, even other things that we've branched out and seen example like women's sports, the disparate pay and how do we help them as well too. So anyways, Magna Carta Wealth is a consulting firm that basically helps athletes build their financial super teams. What I mean by that, our core focus is trying to match athletes with several different categories. So financial planning, tax planning, real estate, lending, and insurance are kind of our core principles of where we try to connect these athletes. And specifically because that's what we saw the biggest need, right? So when we first started out with Magna Carta Wealth, myself and my co-founder, Stuart Gill, he was an Olympic level athlete that went on to become an executive for a company by the name of Exos.
mm,
Exos is a national company that their claim to fame is they train the most NFL level athletes. So think of college players or whatever else trying to make the NFL. Typical
mhm.
numbers, they train anywhere between 100 to 150 student athletes, and maybe about 70 to 80 or so get drafted into an NFL each year. So seeing that, we wanted to be able to create resources because what we realized, the age demographic for these kids are somewhere between 19 to 22 years old. Uh,
Mhm.
Majority of the issues typically happen because their lineage or their parents or their friends, they don't have that experience, right? When it comes to, how do you manage multi-million dollars, let alone just all the different components of whether it's an insurance claim or, what's kind of famous for all these athletes now is that when we file taxes, whether it's federal or state, federal's easy, right? There's one or two forms, whatever you're going to fill if you own a corporation or not. But on the
Right.
state side, they can be filing up to 15, 20 returns a year. So that gets kind of out of hand fairly quickly. So that's why we kind of built this system in terms of how to help that. And I want to see people, especially athletes, preserve their opportunity, right? How do you build wealth? Because that time frame for an athlete is much different than a regular professional. So
So just okay, to back the truck up. So talking about athletes here, did you all stumble into this problem? Was it just from like your conversations? What was from your co-founder's experience? I mean, were you seeing your friends that were having these issues? What kind of yeah, how did you go, okay, there's a real need here and we feel like we can help to solve it.
sure. Just because we're here in lovely San Diego, I did kind of back into it at first. So being in the real estate and lending industry, we were starting to see more and more athletes, kind of like skateboarders and X game athletes, trying
Yeah.
to figure out how to buy homes. Their biggest issue when they're trying to use conventional financing is they don't have conventional type of income, right? They might be
Totally.
getting sponsorship deals from,
Yeah.
companies or skateboard companies, and it may only be, hey, we're going to pay you for this year. But usually for lending, for it to be considered stable income, they used to they're supposed to have 3 years of income and have
Mm-hmm.
a good probability that the income is going to continue. So seeing that is like, okay, cool. We shouldn't eliminate this opportunity to help these specific kind of clients. So what do we do about it? So part of it is aligning yourself with companies that offer unique programs, as well as kind of see the vision, right? Like how do we help a skateboarder that's on their second deal try to figure out how to buy the home that they really want versus you don't qualify at all. So there's a fine line to it all.
Okay, so out of curiosity, because you think athlete, are we talking like is there are you defining that? Are you looking at because you mentioned like Olympic level skateboarders, I'm sure surfboard, surfing in San Diego, right? There's NFL players. I mean, I myself am not a huge sports person, so I kind of gotta like, are you guys putting like a fence around this to be able to define who you're working with, or is this like a commonality between all athletes that you're seeing?
So just kind of like where our specialty and where we focused was mostly the NFL, just because of that Exos relationship. In addition to that, a lot of those things are kind of already built out parameters, such as, there's 1,696 athletes that are in the league each year.
Hmm.
That number is turned over probably somewhere between 30 to 40% each year. We know the beginning contract for an NFL athlete is somewhere around the $500,000 range.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the parameters that we typically were working with. And then kind of being able to quickly match those clients with advisors that have specialties in that area. A little bit tougher when it gets to, like, as an example, I have a really good friend. She was a professional tennis player for many, many years, but those earnings can go up and down
Hmm.
throughout just her versus NBA players are kind of the one of the most unique and one of the best, but the challenges was the quantity, right? There's only typically 12 to 15 players on a team.
Hmm.
And the great thing about them, all their contracts are guaranteed, whereas the NFL, not every contract is guaranteed. Much more percentages unguaranteed or non-guaranteed, if you will.
Hmm. And how are you finding these athletes, right? Because it's not an easy group, I'm sure, to tap into. Is it like you sort of able to get into work with one, do a great job, and goes through word of mouth, or how are you reaching these audiences?
Yeah, great question. Word of mouth is obviously the easiest component, and then usually as you've worked with an athlete or their coach, they'll be like, "Hey, this is how I got it done." So then
Hmm.
they'll do that way, and then on top of that too, my co-founder, he lives in LA, and I forgot who said it, but every athlete wants to be an entertainer, and every entertainer wants to be an athlete. So
Yeah.
there's cross section in there in terms of what we were able to come up with. And on top of that too, we try to make it very purposeful, right? Like
Mhm.
to be able to have our marketing speak directly to what those athletes are going through. We just mentioned, right? How in the world, if you've never filed a tax return or your parents have never filed 15 tax returns, are you going to be able to do that? Having the
Mhm.
steps to walk them through was kind of a big belief for us, right? Like understanding their challenges, listening to them, but more than anything, I think, Lauren, to answer your question, it's building trust, right?
Mhm.
Most of these athletes don't have a support system that has come from that kind of financial kind of literacy or background or lineage. So trying to build that trust is really where it all starts, right? Like we're
Yep.
happy to give away as many strategies or different experiences or results that we've come up with. And the thing is, in our field, right, the majority of the fields that I listed, you have to be licensed to be able to do it. So you could want to write your own mortgage, you could want to do your own financial plan, and you could try to do all those things, but
Mhm.
usually you have to work with licensed professionals. So a little
Mhm.
bit of
Absolutely.
all those components.
Yeah, to be able to get that advice as well. So then, um, with that being said, when you're working with athletes, is it usually when they're in the heat of their career? Is it post-career? Where do you typically kind of support them in that
Yeah, great.
financial journey?
So typically we're trying to work on the front end as much as possible, right? What we found is just the the landscape continues to change. For example, right, one of the big rulings that have changed the entire sports world was the ruling for NIL, which
Mhm.
is image and likeness, which basically a couple years back, the NCAA has started to allow these athletes to kind of generate compensation based on their name, image, and likeness, which was never, ever, ever an opportunity before. As an
Hmm.
example, you have these athletes that are signing up to schools that have never played a down at all, making millions of dollars before they ever step on the field. So, you
Mhm.
know, imagine when you were 17 or 18 years old, if you came up with a $500,000 contract with a car company to advertise their car, like what would you do? How would you spend that money? And how, I'm sure I would have done a lot of mistakes had I got a $500,000 check when I was 17 or 18. And on top of that too, right? It's not really 500,000 after you take out all the taxes and everything else. I quoted spent 500,000 and been in the hole. So just trying to learn these little things and then share. That's usually the best way that we're able to approach this kind of challenge and solution.
Yeah, so interesting. And then to help them prepare for that, do you guys do like educational workshops or is it like one-on-one sessions or how are you helping to kind of coach these athletes as they're getting ready for post
Yeah.
athletic career, I should say?
So we had done some, in-person meetings. Typically, when these athletes are training, we were trying to catch them as part of the training session. Obviously, they're working on their physical component as an NFL athlete. You're working on how fast you can run, how much you can bench press or squat or jump or whatever else. But also just, as they were eating, we cater lunch and be like, hey, these are things to consider when you went to school at USC and all of a sudden you got drafted by Cleveland. Here's
Hmm.
you need to know going into that kind of opportunity as well as a new city, and how do you kind of build from there.
Hmm. And then you're able to support them, I'm sure, but I'm assuming that you also have a pool of partners that specialize in working with athletes. Is that true, or is that how do you kind of make sure you're able to kind of be that support system for them when they go, well, I need this, and I've got someone you can refer them out to the appropriate person that gets them and where they're at.
Yeah, that's correct. So usually like what we think of it as Magna Carta is kind of like the quarterback, if you will, for the situation. And we're
Hmm.
trying to plug and play because a lot of these athletes, like working with an agent, they might already have a financial advisor. They might already have one or two of the professions in there. We're trying to take an assessment to figure out who they have and what is missing, and then go about trying to connect them because some of the licensing is state specific. As an example, right? You might work with a real estate agent here in unfortunately we don't have the Chargers here anymore, but like, let's
Yeah.
just say, you know,
Right.
uh, somebody went to Boise State, they got drafted by the LA Chargers. They have nobody that they know in LA. So how do we work with geographic specific professionals to help them
Yep.
out?
Yep, that makes sense. That are specific to their need and where they're at. Okay. Out of curiosity, are there any athletes that you feel like are kind of model examples for how to manage kind of where they're at and in their financial journey?
What a great question. I think two that really just pop off our list, and because they're kind of different, but Rob Gronkowski as well as Marshawn Lynch. The reason
Mm,
why those two kind of jump off is because they were able to make their living strictly off endorsement deals, and they saved every penny of their NFL contracts. So because of that, saving those contracts, hopefully, if they work with the right team, they're able to invest and have that money compounding year over year. And those guys played a significant amount of time. Hopefully, if they're doing the right moves and they're conservative, living off the interest or some other things, that they're
mhm,
set for life. And more importantly, that their families and legacies are set for life after that.
mhm. Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing this too. So, well, this is great. Andre, anything else that you want to add to that you think would be helpful to share?
Yeah, I think just really just regardless if you're an athlete or not, we always are talking about how do you build the right team around you, right? Even when we're working with regular employees or founders of companies or self-employed people, they might have a great CPA, but they don't have any financial plan. They might
Hmm.
have a family member that's a financial planner, but they're doing their taxes wrong.
Hmm.
They're going out, maybe buying a piece of real estate that is way over their head, or they're just, on a spending spree. So anyways, I say all that to say this, I believe in building a financial team that's well-rounded, that is communicating with each other, because I think that's the biggest component, right? You could have five different professionals with five different kind of um, plans and programs, and if they don't jive, something's got to give.
Yep.
So that, and then just going through an audit every single year. Nobody likes the word audit or anything else, but it really helps you build. If you're trying to get the best credit, the best loan programs, the best insurance rates, is really having a sense of really what's the income, what's the expenses, and organizing your financials, meaning what's in the bank. On top of that too, the tax returns and everything else. I'll share a funny story, just a 10-second story. We were helping a coach, and he was buying a multi-million-dollar home, and his deposit, I want to say, was $250,000. And typically, when we do regular financing programs, you have to have the last 2 years tax returns filed and ready to go. Why
Right.
this was crazy was because when he applied, he got his offer accepted. Everybody's happy. Hey, let's go get your financials. Let's get this all ready. He didn't file his last 2 years tax returns.
Oh my
That
gosh.
that deposit of 200,000 plus was on the line. So you never want to be in that situation. That's why it's super important to be able to have everything organized and have your team in kind of a flow status or flow state as you're trying to, you know, most people, their real estate and their loan is typically 99% of the time their largest financial asset as well as liability. So just want to make sure you do those things right. You know, you only typically get one or two chances at this.
Yeah, that's so fair. That's right. Very good. Well, this is so helpful. I appreciate your insights. It's really fun to hear more about this venture that you're involved with too, and then also just the athlete side of it too, because it is a little bit um right, everyone isn't working with that audience on a day to day. I know there's a number of companies that are investing in this audience. We work with a lot of clients where they've got a target market, but it's not always as kind of refined. And so to be able to hear more of who you're helping, how you're specifically helping them, how you're reaching them, and what those problems are, I think is really valuable. Again, it's especially since it's an audience it's not you're not going to run into every day. So it's fun to hear more about that. But
Sure.
thank you
No,
again.
of course, this was fun. Lauren, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having us on, and definitely you guys are doing great things for your company and the community as well too. So whatever we can do to support, please let us know. But thank you so much. This was enjoyable.
Thanks. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.